You are listening to Governance 360, a Link Group podcast hosted by me, Lindsey Doud. Hello and welcome everyone to the next Link podcast. Today our topic is reconnecting individuals with their assets. And as well as our Head of Industry, Jay Baker, I am delighted to welcome our external speaker for today, Paul Aggett. Paul is Chief Executive Officer at Vestigium Services, which is a fintech startup company that reunites customers with their unclaimed assets. So I'd like to just start by asking Paul, perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about what you do and also more about Vestigium Services, please.
Yes, thanks, Lindsay. Terrific. I'm delighted to be here. And Vestigium Services, we work with caring financial services organizations that want to reconnect with gone-away customers and the estates, the executors, the next of kin of deceased customers for financial services companies. We don't work directly with anyone else but our financial services customers. They are the people that want to find and reconnect with their customers. We're not on commission. We don't take money from the other side of the transaction from consumers. We're free to the consumer. And in that sense, we provide a public service, but our clients are the financial services industry. We have clients that such as JP Morgan, Invesco, M&G. We have a range of asset management clients. We also are the single source supplier of our services to SS&C, who have about 40% of the financial services industry and asset management. So it's all going well, and we're enjoying working with those clients and actually doing what we think is a good thing.
Fantastic, thank you. So just moving on to look at a few issues associated with this. So what does gone away tracing actually mean, and how do you measure the success of that?
Can I use an example? And I call it the Kent couple. The Kent couple, we'll call them the Johnsons. That seems to be the surname of note at the moment. They live all their life down in Kent, and they have 3 life assurance policies, 2 investment trusts, a couple of unit trusts, a couple of bank accounts. Their eldest daughter says to them as they get older, "Why don't you come and live in Norwich next to me? Around the corner from me, there's a house for sale, and I can come in every day and look after you." And so they do. Rolling on a year or so, he dies, Mr. Johnson. The DDRI register, which is the register for deaths in this country, have him down as died Norfolk and Norwich Hospital, last known address Norfolk. All those financial services organisations that have products with him won't be able to find them without what we do, which is tracing. Because the postcode that he died in is nowhere near the postcode where they had the original sale, and that creates a huge problem. And again, creates another huge problem when his wife goes into a care home, and there's also a generation of elderly wives who didn't know all the financial details of the family. There is that issue. There's a dementia issue, and so there's a whole number of vulnerable people style issues that have come out of this. And the children are now paying for her care home fees out of their tax money, not knowing that the elderly couple had set aside money for exactly this situation. And what we endeavour to do is to actually do some proper forensic tracing such that we can reconnect the financial services organisations to that family, such that monies can be paid out as due. That's essentially what we do.
That's a wonderful example, Paul. That actually leads on so wonderfully into what the future looks like in the share registration industry. And the same problems exist where the Johnson family move to be closer to their offspring, and assets that get lost in that way because address changes haven't been applied to various registers of members across the country. So, as you know, we as an industry are looking at the Dormant Assets Commission, and how that is going to. That won't necessarily in itself reunite assets with their owners, but what it will do is put those assets to good use. How do you see Vestigium and other companies helping that arrangement around tracking those shareholders, or what is it that Vestigium does differently from its peers?
What it does differently, Vestigium works with about 50 plus different databases that we work on. But the key to Vestigium is actually a real person. And there's a real forensic tracer. The profile of a Vestigium worker is usually a post-grad from a university doing papers around where sort of research over the computer is part of the degree. History, for instance, would be a classic example.
Yeah.
And we believe that just what we call postcode matching, which many companies do, where they just try and sort of hand out their list of customers with postcodes and say, find these people. They then matched against someone else's list of people with postcodes. If the postcodes don't match, they'll come back with a no response. And doing that, but doing nothing more than that, we don't believe is adequate going forward with the FCA's Principle 6 on treating customers fairly. And we think that one needs to do a bit more to find, to a 99% degree of accuracy, which is what we do, someone who bought a policy or a share in 1999, where they are 20 years later in 2019, requires a little bit more than just a digital solution. It requires someone this person may have got married, changed their surname, got divorced, changed it back, moved house 2 times. Yeah. All of that needs to be trailed through so that we know when I say to you, that person now lives at 30 Acacia Road, St. John's Wood, they really do. It's not a guess. It's not let's send a letter out to this new address and we'll get half of them wrong, but it doesn't matter. It's actually right. And that requires a real person in the middle. So we digitize as much as we can, but actually it's the forensic piece that makes all the difference.
So there's no contact between Vestigium and the end investor. It's Vestigium with its client.
Yes.
And the client is the one that contacts the end investor.
Absolutely right. We have no contact with the customer, the end customer themselves. I don't want to be involved in the grubby end of the market, commission based. I really want to just help financial services companies who really want to actually solve the gone away problem. And it's a massive problem. We are talking, the FCA talk about, for life and pensions, 20 billion. So Let's just run with that number and double it for asset managers and banks and building societies. You're talking 40 billion. The truth of the matter is no one knows the number, and hence lies the problem. Now, for those organizations that don't contact all their customers every year, they'll never know. So whatever they report as the people that they can't find, they're not writing to them, so how would they know?
Yeah.
For those that are doing this now on a regular basis, which is actually the good end of the market, these people are actually reporting between 5 and 10% of the books where they can't find people. And what Vestigium does is say, don't give up. Our track record actually is to find first flush half that list very quickly. Probably 10 or 20% will actually report back and say the data is so poor you'll never be able to find them. And the rest is we call pending. So I'm not a salesman,
right, okay.
So I couldn't come up with a fancy name for it. But essentially it goes into our repository. And what we're saying is over the next few years, we will find those as well.
Right.
Now, why can't we find them straight away? The answer is, let's take an example of someone that goes on a 3-year secondment to Canada,
right,
and then disappears off the radar, and then 3 years are up, comes back to the UK,
Yeah.
They come back to the UK and they apply for a mortgage, whatever. All of a sudden, they're back on some databases on the radar. And we can then say, welcome back. We know you. We know you're the person that bought this policy in 1985.
Right.
You know what I mean? It is you, and now we've tracked you because we have enough information to do that and re-find you. So the databases are changing all the time. So another reason for having a real person sitting in the middle doing the forensic trace and keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
So you can trace people internationally as well.
Yes, absolutely. For one of my asset management clients, I found. Admittedly, I think he was having a midlife crisis, I suspect, but he runs a cafe in Vanuatu in the South Pacific, and we found him.
Oh wow!
So it's a mixed bag around the world, and as I said, it might take time. It might take 1, 2, 3, 4 years. It may not be instant, but I think from the financial services organisations, they can then say, well, we've got a process in place to find these people. As opposed to giving up and saying, these people are gone, they're gone away forever, and that's all there is to it.
So I was just going to ask Lindsey, Paul, directly. In your experience, why are these assets considered dormant? I mean, what's driving this dormancy, or the question of these people being gone away? Have you got any insight into those patterns of why that's happening?
No. Well, I think there is the driver from the Dormant Asset Commission who've come up and said we could give this money to charity, and I think that's got everyone's attention. And I'll come back to that if I may. But I think we now know as the caring part of the industry, caring about our brand and reputation in financial services, that we genuinely want to do the right thing, and we're spurred on, admittedly, by regulation. It is less and less acceptable to use a digital matching process and then give up. One looks at, I think the regulations are keen to we employ two methodologies. So giving your database of customers to someone who then come back and find 10%, and then saying, I'll give them to another person with a big list and they'll find another 5%, isn't actually two methodologies. It's one methodology done twice.
Yeah. And that goes to the point that you were making, that the asset value is not your concern. Your concern is just locating the person.
Yes. And that's worth explaining too. Because I'm not on commission, I don't really care whether the customer's owed £100 or £1 million. I just want to do a good job and find them for the financial services organisations. Yeah. They have to make the call on what we would call de minimis. What is worth investing the time in. My own view is, for live business, if you like, all customers, we should be providing a level of customer care to all customers, which involves writing to them manually and actually knowing that they are still there and they are not a vulnerable person at that time, and we're doing the right things by them. There is an exception on de minimis, which is, I'm not sure you're aware, in the life and pensions industry there is industrial business. So it used to be the old penny policies that were written in the first half of the 20th century. Those amounts are very small, and one could say that there is a de minimis level where we as a financial services industry, or that part of the industry, have lost contact for years and years and years and years and years, and a digital solution is probably the only way there, and it won't work for most of it. But I'm not sure, that it's actually worthwhile spending more money on finding that lot. But I think for most companies with an active, ongoing customer base, then yes, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter whether you're owed £100 or £1 million.
Yeah. And in your experience, what do you see that de minimis being? Is it £50, £100, £5,000 or whatever it may be?
I think it's probably closer between £100 and £250, that kind of level. I don't think it's smaller than that. I mean, you've got to put yourself in the customer's viewpoint.
That's interesting.
What we've got out there is not the financial services viewpoint. So what we've got out there is a lot of small amounts owed to a lot of people.
Yes.
We could be talking 1 or 2 million people who are owed not very large sums of money, but to many of them, it might be.
It might be, absolutely. It's a very, very valid point, very valid point.
So interestingly, we were talking about digitisation, but also I was interested to hear you say that can't actually be the full driver. There also has to be the forensic involvement as well. So in terms of moving forward, do you see that is going to be the model, or do you think digitisation will actually be the solution in the future? It will become more sophisticated, or do you think that we'll always need that personal intervention for a good, efficient tracing process?
I think we'll always need a personal intervention. I'm not a Luddite. I think digitisation will get better and better, but it won't be the only answer. And again, comes back to simple postcode matching. It doesn't actually work. Going back to my Kent couple example, it doesn't work where you've got mobility, social mobility or otherwise. It doesn't work when you've got care homes. It doesn't work with the in those situations. So I'm a believer in the hybrid solution. I don't think we need. I'm not looking at building an organisation with hundreds of employees doing everything manually either, by any stretch of the imagination. If there are parts of my business that I can automate, then by golly I will, and I am doing so, and we're doing it gradually as we go on. So I look at what my people do forensically, and I say, is there anything you're doing that would be better suited to a digital solution? Tell us, and we'll build the systems accordingly. But we are talking, in terms of gonaways, we are talking in those kind of numbers, 40, 50 billion, lots of legacy, lots and lots and lots of legacy, going back. I mean, I saw one person's book where the oldest person on their books was born in 1900. She obviously had died years ago. No one is 119 years of age. So she died, but her son may have died in the Second World War. So we've got a lot of legacy in there. Yeah. The people the customers out there don't even know that they're entitled to this money. So there's no one, it's not like the passive solution of saying, well, we haven't stolen the money as an industry. What we've done is we've put it away, and, all they have to do is ring up and claim. Mm. But the people I'm talking about don't know to claim, because they don't know that it was their great uncle and their grandfather and whatever had these policies at all. So nothing's happening at the moment, and that's probably where the word dormant came out, because they are literally just sitting there doing nothing until such time as someone says, "Let's do something about it." Now, I'm an evangelist for we can find 3/4 of that. Of those people and their assets by trying. Yeah. And this morphs nicely into the Dormant Asset Commission.
I was just going to ask you about the Dormant Assets Commission and the Reclaim Fund. I shall be quiet now and let you carry on.
Well, the Dormant Asset Commission, I think, did a good job, and they wrote a report, and actually in the executive summary at the front, they actually say much more should be done to find gone away customers before such a state as those monies are then transferred to charity. And I totally agree with that. I actually totally agree with that. I think as I said, I think we can find the bulk of this and return it to its rightful owners. Mm-hmm. Emphasis on rightful owners before we hand other people's money to charity as a sort of a sop for not doing anything ourselves. And I think, the organisations that are my clients actually get that entirely. And they'd rather return the money to the right place than to just hand it to charity. It's their customers, for goodness sake. Yeah. And they're passionate about their customers as much as, I am about mine. And they actually want, it's much better for them, brand, reputation, resale opportunities, to actually find the right person and say, this belongs to you, re-engage.
I agree. And I think even from the Dormant Asset Commission's perspective and the Reclaim Fund, it's much better for them to receive the true dormant asset rather than a much bigger pool on which there will be future claims. So much rather, they would rather receive the smaller pool for distribution where there's an unlikely occurrence.
Yes, absolutely. And, I have had conversations with Reclaim Funds Limited, who are the recipient of the bank's monies under the dormant asset rules. And they totally endorse what I'm trying to do. We're not at each other's throats at all. They would be delighted if I can find lots of people and get those monies and assets to the right place, such that the monies that they get, they can distribute rather quickly out to the charities. It's counterintuitive, but they'll actually get money out, faster.
Yeah.
If a proper tracing job is done up front, then at the moment where they're actually sitting on the money going, oh my God, if we give that money to charity, the customer always has the right to perpetuity to reclaim, and then we're going to have to pay out twice, all because the institutions who gave us this money have not really given it a good go at sort of tracing.
Understood, yeah. On identifying gonaways, how many? I'm interested to know what that split would be. About, you mentioned earlier that there's the pendings, your immediate success rates, whatever percentage you mentioned, 50%. How many of those you identify as being deceased?
Oh, that's a very good question. On all our clients to date, it's a frightening figure, actually. It's 30%. So let me be absolutely clear on that. If we find 50%, 30% will be dead, so therefore on the total book, you're talking 15%.
Yeah.
But that's a big number. Yeah. That's a far bigger number than it should be. Now, in fairness, I'm looking at asset managers who would be very similar to Lincoln Shares. So that's the stat that you're going to get. The life and pension stats are lower because they do what we call in that industry mortality testing, particularly, on the pensions annuity books. So their numbers will be a bit lower on deceased. They're a little bit more sophisticated. But even if it was half that, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. But on asset managers, definitely, you give me 1,000 gonaways to look at.
Yeah.
And I'll find you, 150 deceased people pretty much straight away.
The reason I asked that question is because it occurred to me that many beneficiaries of deceased estates or the executors are unaware of what the true extent of the asset value is or what the asset holdings are of the deceased in the first place. So when that estate comes to be liquidated, there are often these pools of shares or pools of other investments that are totally forgotten about.
Absolutely.
I wondered how we as an industry, maybe not for you to answer, Paul, but I wondered how we as an industry could tackle that in the first place to avoid that even becoming an issue. So it's more to educate the shareholders to ensure that record keeping and all the rest of it is up to date. That's not even really for the registrar to do, but there's food for thought for the future.
Yes, you make a good point. Well, it's quite easy to understand why people don't know about these. You won't know about the deceased assets, and the people are deceased and these assets. If you go back to a will, the will often say, and all other assets going to be split between whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
It says all other assets. It doesn't actually list them all. And that's for obvious practical reasons. You do a will once, you don't want to do it for another 10 years. But meanwhile, things are changing.
Yeah.
So you've got that issue is really coupled with our desire for privacy and secrecy. And if I use a very personal example, me, My children, who are 16 and 20 respectively, have no idea whatsoever about the financial wealth of me as our family, my wife and I as a family. They know we live in a house and they know we've got a couple of cars. That is it. And that's the way it's going to be. And that's the way it is for virtually every family around. So if my wife and I die in a car crash, they are nowhere in terms of knowing where to start this whole process. So what I'm trying to do is to get financial services to actually then do it the other way around, to actually come out and find them.
Right.
It is so difficult for them to actually find the financial services organisations. And, you got My Lost Accounts and all these other things. They don't really help at all, in the sense that you've got to guess and apply one-on-one to each bank and each life insurance company in the UK, and just ask a general question. Did my dad have one of yours? It's just impractical. Yeah. The most practical way is to get the industry to be in regular contact with all its customers. When my own father died, I was lucky in the sense that he was organised. And I rifled through his study drawers and found a couple of life assurance policies. Otherwise, I would have no idea. Then that brings us on to the future, where actually this problem is going to get worse, because we're now entering in an age of the paperless, office and paperless transactions. That's all very well, but access to the emails and the files with Google of your late father's records is going to be almost impossible, as I think even the security services have found out. We're going to be locked out of actually being able to discover what our parents had.
Right.
From a digital point of view, and there will be no paper. The only practical way of solving this problem is financial services to step up and say, we keep an eye on all our clients and where they are. It hasn't happened in the past. It needs to happen now.
That's a very interesting point.
And what's, if we're to sort of a difficult question, we're obviously just trying to think, to actually make that step change, to make financial services companies actually get into the mindset of realising that they've got to instigate this, what do you think needs to happen in the industry? Is it a matter of embedding something in corporate governance? Is it regulations, or is it still that there isn't enough awareness out there? What do you think needs to change, Paul?
I think I've been on this journey, on this road for a couple of years now, but only a couple of years. And there's been a massive sea change between when I talked to people 2 years ago and even today. That is all positive. I have this list of blue chip clients because they get it. Yeah. And out there are a number of financial services organizations that, that maybe haven't got there yet on their journeys, but they're getting there. And I think that's right. I'm not a basher of the financial services organizations. I think I'm very positive. I think they really want to help. If I was asking for one thing I guess it's from the regulator, it isn't actually another stick so they could beat my client base up with for being a bit slower than necessary to do this. It's actually the ability for my organizations to be able to charge the end client for the service. It doesn't sound a lot, and my fees are sort of range between like £10 and £12, but it's a massive sea change for the industry. When you're talking about a big life and pension company that might have 300,000 or 400,000 gone away, so and needs to do this on a regular basis, you can see it is decent sums of money. But when in the life and pension industry, where the average policy is £18,000, and in that sense, £10 doesn't seem a lot of money. So, but it's just that there are a lot of them. I don't think that any end customer would object to the fact that they got £18,000 minus a £10 fee, or truthfully, it would be a bit bigger than that because my costs need to be added on to the re-engagement costs of the companies themselves. Yeah. But we're not talking big sums of money. And I think clarity on what can be recharged to do this. This is for the customer's benefit. Mm. But I also understand that some of the financial services industry, particularly life and pensions, they've bought closed books going back 50 or 60 years and really haven't budgeted for these kinds of sums of money. And I think there needs to be a carrot and a stick. But we are getting there, and as I said, I'm encouraged. I'm really encouraged by the amount of people that ring me up and say they want to work with us. Yes, good.
Well, I have to say, Paul, that's been wonderfully insightful. Yeah. It's you've brought a different perspective onto what tracing and gone away shareholders is all about for us. Certainly something for us to think about. But before we draw all of this to a close, I'm going to ask you a direct question. What is keeping you awake at night? Whether that is about those shareholders who have left their share certificates behind sofas and don't know what they're doing, or is it that issue of the resources that are available to your customers in order to do these schemes in the first place? What is keeping you awake at night?
I think I'm very aware that I'm sort of only halfway down the journey here, and so what keeps me awake is that continual link to get our more and more clients, potential clients for me, aware of the issue, and I think I'm not sure that there are enough CEOs of financial services organisations who even are aware of this. I think at corporate governance level they are, definitely, but it's whether that filters up. Because for me, and I was reading a book the other day which has just been released, I won't name check, on brand and reputation. I'm an advocate for positive, reinforced brand and reputation improvement in the financial services industry. That's what I'm really strongly on. And I think we can actually create an industry which is even more respected than perhaps it is at the moment. Right. But doing the right thing. And that's my passion, to get people to do the right thing.
Excellent. So growing awareness, I think, is the main driver.
At this stage.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got some work to do with our clients at Link, and I know that our peer group in the industry as well is working hard to try and work on that awareness with its own client bases as well.
Thank you very much to Jay and especially to Paul for that incredibly insightful conversation. I think we can all see this is a massively hot topic. Lots more needs to be done in the industry, and I really look forward to seeing many more financial services companies taking this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Listen, I just wanted to say thank you to both you, Lindsay and Jay, for allowing me to come and talk to you. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it. So thank you for the opportunity.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Check out the podcast description for more information on this episode's guests and presenters. And if you want to get in touch with any of us, we'd love to hear from you.